and yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how Apple does going
There's
forward.
a question in the chat room that says, do you think, from Steven, do you think that Steve Jobs is the one that did that, or do you think he knew where to hire people who knew how to do that? And I think the answer to that question is yes. When you go back through the track record, when they created the Macintosh, it's a big deal. I mean, that was Steve Jobs' baby. It really was. And one of the big things in there was fonts. And so everything that you would have used, some kind of terminal with a font, like, he got to where there was fonts had, this article will talk about predetermined spacing between letters. I don't even know what it's called, but the keying or whatever that is, that separates letter from letter. You know what I'm talking about? Is any of this? Stop laughing at me. But this little bit of
chat
space.
room, everybody's making some great jokes. Nashville Pastor just said Apple got us kicked out of the garden. We all know that.
The little bit of space between letters. Well, the reality is, in actual natural writing and making fonts look right, between some letters there needs to be more or there needs to be less space between those letters. And so one of the things that Jobs did in the Macintosh when they first introduced that, the font system, that was something that he was like, we've got to get this right because it needs to look more realistic and more natural. So I do think that he definitely has an eye for these kinds of things and making things work the way that seem natural. But then I also think that he knows talent, and I mean, one of the greatest industrial designers works for Apple. Johnny Ive is a fantastic product designer, and Jobs knows that and is able to pull him into a company and surround himself with people who also have an eye for this kind of stuff, and it just builds the effect.
Yeah, I think Jobs is the guy for the design. I think he is the man, and he may hire people that have a similar eye, but it starts with him.
There's on my white plastic MacBook that I have, there's stories about that being taken into his office. Say, okay, here's the MacBook, the designers. Here's what we've got of it. What do you think? On the bottom, there are these 3 screws that hold the processor, that hold basically the heat sink for the processor on there, and they weren't in the correct position. And so he had them totally redesign the motherboard to get those to where they form equilateral triangle, so that they're all the separate amount of space apart. And then there's this other thing where if you've ever had one of those, on each side, the left and the right hand side, right below where your palm rest is, there were these 2 little screws. On one side, they held part of the support work for what holds the hard drive. On the other side, there didn't used to be screws because there's nothing there and nothing there to hold.
They didn't need it.
And yeah, screws weren't needed. But there is, in the final design, there's these 2 little screws there. And if you push it, you can kind of feel that they're not really holding anything. There are 2 screws on the side of that laptop that don't serve any function or purpose whatsoever, but that bring
aesthetics.
Right. That bring what's that called? You know,
symmetry.
Yes, that bring a symmetry to the product. And that's something that he fought for, to say, we need to have these 2 screws on this side. Yeah. So definitely he is.
See,
part of
HP
that process.
is not bogged down with those kind of things.
Exactly.
All right. Well, let's move on here. So XXX domains go on sale today.
Yeah, we championed the cause of this a few months ago. In really saying that the church and the porn industry shouldn't be on the same side of the argument. Because the porn industry doesn't want these. The church shouldn't be saying, yeah, we don't want them either. Because, I mean, basically what we should be doing is looking at what they're saying and try to find the opposite of what they're doing. Yes. The reason is, with a domain like this, you'd literally be able to set up a internet red light district, which would make filtering of the internet very much easier. Now, some people say that's an intrusion on freedom of speech. I disagree, but anyhow, they do go on sale, but there's a bit of a problem.
There is a shakedown that's happening. What's the company that controls these domains?
ICANN is like they are the domain. They make the rules about domains. Yeah, ICANN.
So what they're doing is they're going to major corporations like Walt Disney, and they're saying, "Hey, you need to go ahead and buy your XXX domain. Otherwise, someone else is going to have, Walt Disney.xxx." And they're doing this for major corporations, and I mean, some are calling it a shakedown.
Oh yeah.
And charging a lot for it
Right.
too.
Yeah.
Whereas
They're taking
like
advantage
a
of
.com domain
corporations.
costs about $10 to $12 a year. These are costing $80 to $120.
So you can't just go on GoDaddy and buy your.
No, I don't believe so. I haven't checked. Steven said he tried there in the chat room. He says he's got Steven.xxx, and then Sally Sheets says,
yeah.
Steven Paul! And Steven's reply is, uh-oh.
I do think this is. I mean, how awesome would it be for a parent? You go on your internet filtering system and you ban all .xxx. You know.
Well, it's
sites.
also a way to legislate, and this is why the porn industry is against it, because now you can legislate to say if you're in the porn industry, you have to be on XXX.
Mm-hmm.
So now it becomes really simple. If my child pulls up a .com,
Yeah.
and there's pornography all over it, now you can easily follow the trail and prosecute. Part of the point
Yeah,
now has
wow.
been, well, how can we track this? And we want to have freedom.
The deal is there's no law that goes hand in hand with this that says if you are a pornographic site, you have to use
Right.
and only use
Right.
.xxx.
And
until that,
if you'll remember, my argument was that this is really not going to stop it, because anything offshore, and many of these are in
They
other
are. That's right.
countries, anything offshore is not going to be covered by the law.
but it's going to bring a step in that if that were part of the
I agree
rule.
with its goal.
At this point,
I
though,
agree with
it's
its goal and purpose.
at this point that's not part of the rule, and so it doesn't make any difference. Because a porn company could have .com and .xxx, and that doesn't help our goal of saying making filtering easier any easier. It doesn't do anything to accomplish that for us. So how do we work with that?
Well, don't you think that within the next 17 months, when we come under a one world government, that they'll go ahead and take all that and ban it worldwide?
So that's what you're planning when you become the big leader, Heath?
Are you going to be the Antichrist?
No.
We have a clean
Let me
Antichrist.
make
Can you
it
believe
perfectly clear. I am not the Antichrist.
I don't know. You're pretty beastly.
Listen.
I'm telling you.
Heath can hardly be custodian, let alone the Antichrist.
That's why, certain people have accused certain world leaders of being the Antichrist, and I've said there's just no way.
Yeah. All right. Well, the debate will go on. We'll continue to watch this XXX thing. I'm hoping that legislation eventually comes about that says everyone has to go to this if you're dealing in the porn industry. We'll see. And it is the reason why the porn industry is against the XXX domain. All right. Let's move on to
Download of the Week.
Yay! Our download of the week is iSplash. Now, this is not a free app. It costs 99 cents, but if you like to do fun stuff with photography, this is a program that I would recommend. Basically, you take a colored picture, it makes it black and white, and then you can take segments of that picture and colorize just those areas that you want to have be color. So I've got, do you have the before and after here?
I sure do.
Yeah, there's the for those of you
This
that can
is-
see.
This is kind of creepy right here.
Yeah.
I just got to be honest, Tony.
For those of you that can see, we were on vacation, and so this is Nicole. These are wild grapes, and so she's eating them. All right,
Why
now
didn't you buy the kid a Happy Meal?
here we go.
Why does-
Happy Meal. So here it is after.
Oh.
So you can colorize any portion of the picture that you want to, and it's relatively easy. I mean that I did that in probably about 20 minutes.
Now, when you said app, or is this a computer app?
It's computer.
Mac app?
It's computer.
Phone app?
Computer. Apple.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Mac app.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm sure that in the PC world, there's probably some equivalent, but it's not free. But 99 cents. Hard to go wrong with that. And so that is our download of the week. All right. Let's keep things rolling and move on to They Said It.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
As a result of the most recent development, the doctors have decided that Peyton will not practice. His participation, therefore, in Sunday's game versus Houston will likely be doubtful. Indianapolis Colts official press release concerning Peyton Manning and his ongoing neck problems. Source, Sporting News.
It's wild when you see them all together. They all look alike. Cynthia Daly, who had a child through a sperm donor, who has now sired 150 children through a sperm bank. Source, The New York Times.
There is no God. Don't believe everything you hear. A billboard sponsored by Pastor Frank Moore of McElroy Road Church of Christ. Source, The Associated Press.
Okay, guys, the one that I read, this was a story on the Today Show. This is really blowing up big time, and the ethics of this. And so what's interesting, one guy today on the Today Show said, well, clearly 150 are too many. So here's the inevitable question. What's the magic number? I mean, this is the brave new world.
Yes. Trying to figure out how to...
Well, and with Cynthia Daly, her context is her and her lesbian lover decided they wanted to have a child, so Cynthia is the one that went to the sperm bank. She carried the child, and she wants to maintain a community so that this child can know all of its half brothers and sisters.
Oh, goodness.
And so Cynthia is beginning to
Imagine that family reunion.
Yeah,
Whoa.
Cynthia is beginning to see this thing grow on the Today.
It's like a Mormon family reunion.
Oh man.
Oh, well, there we lost the Coca-Cola sponsor.
Pepsi, not Coca-Cola.
Well, and on the Today Show, they have another guy out in Seattle who has sired 74 so far, and one of these mothers brought the child to see its biological father, and he agreed to it, but he said he wanted to be very clear, I am not this child's father, and he is engaged to be married right now, and his bride-to-be is really struggling. And she said, so how many of these little reunions are we going to be having in our lifetime?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Here's the thing. This is my question. I don't know a lot about sperm banks, but don't you get paid for making a
I don't know,
donation?
Steve.
Oh, that was wrong.
Are you there, Steve? Are you just being silent?
Just a minute. I'm just getting back from the bank.
So that's why he's joining us via Skype today.
No.
My.
Steve.
Oh, gracious.
Oh, my goodness.
I would imagine in some of these cases, but I mean, I honestly don't know.
There was, I can't believe I'm going here on the Techology Show, but there's a movie called Sweet Home not Sweet Home Alabama. No. Legally Blonde. It's Reese Witherspoon. And they actually talk about this. She's studying to be a lawyer, and one of the classes is a guy who goes to the sperm bank wants to have some parental rights with the child, and so they argue that in the class. And I don't remember everything that's said, but right when I read that's bad that Legally Blonde is the first thing that came to my mind. I blame my wife.
Well, you have two of these groups now. The one in Seattle, there's one person who's coordinating the same thing. They want their child to know all their half-brothers and sisters.
Right.
So they're keeping track. And so now this group is 74. Cynthia, the story that we were referencing here, she's up to 150 now.
Wow.
And I was raised in dairy community, and so I mean this isn't uncommon in the dairy world. You find a good bull, he's got good sperm, and so you just artificially inseminate the cows.
Listen, you're talking to a guy. If we go to my parents' house today, I can take you to where the liquid nitrogen is, where they store all this stuff.
See, okay, and this is my point. So and like you guys started laughing right away, but this is the brave new world. Yeah. I mean, if it's okay for animals, why isn't it okay for us?
Oh my dear. Well, here's another thing too. You got to think about is we're putting this on the guy, but there were 150 people who picked his profile.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like they just pick a number.